Welcome to Trial Site News podcast series. We are excited to have a special guest today from Veeva Systems, one of the fastest growing, most successful cloud-based software companies serving the life sciences industry. Veeva has seen a meteoric rise, initially focusing as a Salesforce partner building CRM software for pharmaceutical companies on the Prominent platform, and then building out a suite of clinical technologies starting with the electronic trial master file, Vault for regulatory and manufacturing, and other document management solutions, as well as expanding into electronic data capture, clinical trial management systems, and more. The Veeva success story has been notable. And so it's our privilege to introduce our special guest, Bree Burks, Vice President of Strategy Site Solutions at Veeva. Bree has accumulated impressive credentials, earning a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing at the University of West Florida and a Master of Science, Nursing Administration from the University of South Alabama. Now, Bree started her career working for the University of Florida in various nursing positions and then moved into research. She then took on the role of Senior Professional Research Assistant, Department of Radiology at the University of Colorado, Denver. And prior to joining Veeva, Bree landed a prestigious position as Senior Director at Vanderbilt Institute for Clinical and Translational Research, where she was involved with major research at the Vanderbilt Coordinating Center. And last year, she moved to Veeva in her current role. So Bree, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the pleasure is ours. We're excited to have you here. So let me just drop right into it. First question of the day is about you and your personal journey in research. How has your view of research changed over the years from when you first started until now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that probably most people in this industry have had a pretty major shift along their career path, and mine started in nursing school. That was really my first introduction into clinical trials, and we really just focused on dissecting the design of the study. And at that point, I never really thought about how it all got done until I found myself actually doing the work. And it was surprising at first, because transitioning from nursing, where much of our world, as I was dealing with patients clinically, was supported by technology, it kind of felt like a step backwards to actually get into the clinical trials process as a nurse, where so much of it was manual, so much of it was on paper. And I went from an electronic medical record to pen and paper. And as I continued along my career path, I was able to make some strides internally within the hospitals I worked in, to really try to be a little bit more innovative with the way we got things done. And it always seemed ironic that we were trying to build new therapies and innovate in medicine, but we were working very archaically. So at the end of my journey, when I was at Vanderbilt, we had made some good progress, and I was excited to look at trials that we were running and feeling like we were being more efficient. We were automating. But really, that was only in our own environment there within one singular hospital. And so it's been really neat for me to now zoom out and look across, the industry from a global perspective and think about all of the parties involved. My specific focus continues to be research sites, but to truly identify that there's so much work that we need to do across the industry in order to innovate in the way that we want to bring these important therapies to market.
Yeah, and clinical trials have gone through a huge transformation since the onset of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So where and when possible research sponsors are moving to remote, decentralized, or so-called virtual trials, can you share your industry observations on this trend?
Yeah. So more than 1,600 trials were disrupted from COVID in some way. Many of them halted. Hopefully most of them will be able to continue. But I feel like I've watched us gone from, it's really cool to think about a virtual trial and see people with that in their title maybe, to, okay, how do we actually do this at warp speed? And now what are our best practices? So, initially coming from the site perspective, I felt that sites were pretty nervous about virtual trials. At first, there was this term of siteless trials that seemed to almost go hand in hand with this idea of being virtual. And I really feel like we've shifted away from that now. And now we're really thinking about The site role is critical because it is our link to patients, and technology and virtual trials really can empower sites to work better and better support the patient experience in a clinical trial. So I feel like we've definitely 180'd and made this transition, and we're truly thinking about how to be more patient and site centric. And I hope that what I will continue to see is that patients and sites are at the table at the very beginning of a virtual trial discussion to really share their perspective, their user experience with the technology, and that they are going to be more of a partner in the virtual trial process than what we originally thought.
Now, TrialSite has done a few surveys on the topic of virtual clinical trials and how various technologies can work together to facilitate this hybrid class of trial. Could you share how Veeva's various products support these types of trials?
Yeah. So it really goes into what I was just describing, that sites and patients are a critical part of a trial process and therefore a virtual trial environment. And we are really thinking about that at Veeva. And it's important for us to share our approach there. We want to be patient-centric. We want to be site-centric. And with that in mind, we want sites to be able to truly go paperless and to standardize. We also feel that it's very important to provide affordable technology to research sites. They historically have not had a budget to select and implement their own technology. And so with those kind of guiding principles, we have developed technology for sites, Site Vault. That technology allows them to truly go paperless, to get signatures virtually, to perform remote monitoring. And it's neat because it's really a purpose-built system for remote monitoring. There's lots of tools out there that you can use to support remote monitoring, and we're certainly not the only ones that can get that job done. However, I think what's unique about our system is that we were able to build workflows that really very specifically support the remote monitoring needs. And so we're very proud of that. And then from the patient perspective for virtual trials, we are working on a new technology called MyVeeva. And this is all about really having a clinical trial in a patient's pocket. And allowing them, we know for certain patients that maybe have a rare disease or they have, end stage oncology cancer, they are going to probably participate in more than one study. And maybe many other patients are in a rural area and they just simply can't get to a research site easily. So MyVeeva is all about bringing the trial to the patient and allowing the patients to really standardize and work very, very cohesively with their research sites to communicate, to do virtual visits. And so our approach at Veeva has really been thinking about sites first and patients first and building technology just for them in clinical trials in addition to our research sponsors.
So speaking on directly that, and you also touched upon how many cases were put on hold because of COVID-19, which of course impacts research sites especially hard. Can you expand on your thoughts on how research sites can accelerate their turnaround out of the pandemic conditions to a more healthy and thriving state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, research sites haven't historically operated, I think, like a standard business would, because they're thinking about patients first. There was a survey done pretty recently from the Society of Clinical Research Sites, and it showed that a little more than half of research sites operated with less than 3 months of operating cash in reserves, which seems crazy. I mean, how many businesses do you know where the majority of the businesses are forced to operate like that? And so the reality is that they just don't have the right tools in place to operate effectively. And COVID really highlighted that and really did, hurt a lot of research sites. So I think at this point, they're thinking about, I need to have a stake in my own technology. If you can imagine running a business where you can't even identify for that week or that month what services you're providing easily or what revenue you're going to generate from those services, then you might be thinking about a research site, because the operations of a research site are contained within systems that they don't own, that they didn't develop, and that they didn't select, that were selected by sponsors, or maybe even if they're within a hospital setting, were selected to support clinical care and billing for clinical purposes. So I think what we're learning from COVID is that sites want to standardize, and sites want to have technology that supports their business processes, that takes all of these projections they're forced to make before a trial starts about volume and effort, and really shows them how the study actually plays out and empowers them with data on their business, and that they really are going to have to see themselves as a business to be able to sustain and to be able to continue to support patients in the critical way that they do. And we are really listening to that at Veeva. Again, I know I'm excited that I think other technology vendors are doing the same thing, but we need to allow them to truly standardize and have access into their own business processes so that they can sustain and really, again, work like a true business. So I'm excited and thinking we're making strides there for sites.
And speaking of standardization, we've noticed an interesting trend ourselves, and this is about a bit of a consolidation in the independent site market as private equity has been coming in and buying up sites. What is your perspective on this trend, and how can Veeva be an equalizer for the smaller commercial research site?
Yeah. Well, this is a good question, and I have a good simple answer to this. We provide technology for free to research sites that they can standardize. Site Vault Free is technology that any research site has access to, be it a small commercial research site or be it a healthcare system. We really have this idea that no site should be left behind, because we need to meet patients where they're at. And patients are going to be within large academic medical centers, small commercial sites. They're going to be within small private practices in rural communities, and they should be able to go to get care and to participate in trials in a way that works for them. And we've been talking a lot about diversity and needing to have a more diverse patient population in trials. And we're never going to get there if we don't meet patients where they're at. So I see that these smaller research sites, if you will, that are independent, they're critical to this industry. And we are trying to help them sustain and work better and more efficiently by providing them with free software that they can truly standardize on and get rid of paper and decrease a lot of the work and effort that's simply just manual, and that also comes from having to work differently across different systems to work with different sponsors. A lot of these small research sites are working across sponsors. They're trying to diversify their portfolio. That's good for their business. It allows them to be a little more risk averse. And so with that in mind, they need ways to work more efficiently, and they can certainly do that with Site Vault Free. So again, our motto here at Veeva is that all sites matter, and we want to meet patients where they're at. So it's nice to be able to share that we have free technology that many dedicated research sites are using today.
Now, Bree, you are intimately familiar with the major academic medical centers from past professional life. They, in many cases, have become somewhat bureaucratic and hierarchical. Many sponsors tell us they would rather work with small sites, yet major academic sites are so important. And TrialSite has been a partner to some efforts to help larger sites gain focus and become more agile. So what are your thoughts on how major academic sites can continue to do what they are good at while embracing change, including a more lean and market-directed culture?
Yeah, my initial thoughts are, I get it, but it also hurts, being in that place myself for many years, working within a lot of the hoops that do exist within our very important academic medical centers. So I think that academic medical centers, that we've already sort of weeded out trials that simply can be done more effectively outside of an academic medical center. If you're going to do an outpatient ophthalmology study, that then maybe an academic medical center doesn't really make sense for trials like that. But personally, I've been involved in lots of studies where we are dealing with critically ill patients, specialized surgical treatments for something like severe stroke or intracranial hemorrhage, transplant, people in end stages of very rare diseases. And these patients, again, are being found within academic medical centers. So it's not something that for certain therapies, we're going to be able to stay away from. So we have to be able to do it better, to your point, right? And I think that there is a little bit of a misconception that academic medical centers just want to stand up committees for everything. Now, I've been on a lot of committees, so I still think that there's opportunities for improvement there. But again, if you can imagine that much of that is due to the fact that as they accept trials, there's not really standards that they're able to put in place, because many sponsors, CROs, even, things like the NIH, that academic medical centers work on many NIH and investigator-initiated studies. There's not a lot of standardization across systems and processes. So you simply feel like you are reinventing the wheel, oftentimes, to do some of these very, very specialized trials. And I would say that that's not just something that academic medical centers are bringing upon themselves. They really, I think for us to truly make progress in this area, we need to see more of a partnership approach. We need pharma and CROs and a lot of the organizations that sponsor clinical trials. They really need to sit down at the table with the principal investigators and the operational people within academic medical centers and all sites for that matter, and really come to a better understanding of how to partner and work better together. Oftentimes, academic medical centers, again, like any site, they're brought to the table after a lot of the decisions are already set in stone for the study. And they are then put in a position of, if the juice is worth the squeeze, really, for their patients to take that study on, and again, not really be able to have input into how the study operates. And so, a quick example I can give there is for quality purposes and to really elevate internally, many academic medical centers are trying to use their own regulatory platforms. This allows them to truly have competencies and support internal improvements and how they capture and how they can track simple things like signatures, expirations on documents. These things seem very simple. But when a sponsor requires you to use different systems to do that work, it creates a drag. And that happened over and over again when I was in academic medical centers. We were trying to put a standard internally in place, and then we would have a sponsor come to the table and require something different that really didn't work for us. So without better communication, I feel like there's just too much tension in operations, and we really need to work better together earlier on trial designs in order for academic medical centers to really become more efficient.
So let's talk then about study startup. Veeva did a survey recently with sponsors and CROs and found ongoing challenges with the study startup process, as you kind of touched on here. Can you share a summary of those challenges?
Yeah. The summary really is there are a lot of balls that are getting batted back and forth, and there's really not a lot of transparency, and it's taking way too long. And we know that from this recent survey, 61% of total trial times was accounted for study startup. That seems crazy. We're talking about patients not even being enrolled. And if we're working harder just to get approvals in place, and we all know how difficult it is just to simply find patients, not only find them, but actually recruit them into the study and retain them, we are doing something wrong. We have control over what approvals need. Our regulators have control, and we need to work together to align our own processes better to decrease all of these hoops at the beginning of the study. Our survey also found things like 75% showed that processes are still incredibly manual. And that study startup times are massively impacted by that. We've also seen things like 81% saying spreadsheets. Spreadsheets is my go-to. That's what I use to understand where I'm supposed to be at. And I don't know if you have worked on spreadsheets before, but it's very, very easy to create errors there. And none of that's automated. You're constantly having to shift your focus, and you can't work efficiently when you're managing information across multiple spreadsheets, and the work back and forth is not automated. That's certainly a challenge. And as we think about this here at Veeva, we are, again, thinking about everyone that's involved in the study startup process. The site is a key contributor, obviously, and we need to have products that are connected where we can more seamlessly exchange statuses, information, data back and forth across sponsors, CROs, and sites. And I think that's really where we're going to benefit, is decreasing all of the manual transactions. And that means that we've got to make products that work for the different parties as well as are connected. And every study is not treated as a one-off. When we start treating studies as a one-off from a technology and process standpoint, that's where we really start to see the burden and the increased timelines associated with study startup.
Right, which goes back to your point on standardization and why it's so important.
Right.
So let's talk. I want to go back to your Vault site, Vault Free announcement. Now, we thought it was a good idea. Can you share with us what the rationale was behind offering the product for free, and if it's working? How does this product help sites solve site challenges and possible challenges with study startup?
Sure. So, we know that sponsors fund our whole industry. And a lot of the pretty standard way that we see sites seek reimbursement from sponsors is lots of invoicing and negotiating their costs over and over again. So to go back to study startup, negotiations of budgets and contracts is a huge drag on a clinical trial getting started. And so we didn't want to add to that existing problem. And so the goal with the free software is, just, I feel like it's good to clear this up too. Just because it's free doesn't mean every site's just going to use it. It has to work for them. How many free apps do you have access to that you haven't downloaded? And so the goal there really was to try and capture a lot of sites on our technology, to really move the market and make things more efficient. Again, going away from this, everything's a one-off. So in order to make this work, we do need to have a lot of sites on our technology, and they need to love the technology. The way that we will continue to scale and grow our technology for sites is by allowing sponsors and CROs to benefit from the standardization and from sites using Site Vault Free. And so we are figuring that out over time, but it's a journey and it's a process. We do have a product out now called Site Connect that is an example of how over time we will be working with sponsors to reimburse through different products on our clinical network like Site Connect, where they are now benefiting from the automated transaction of sites on our technology. These transactions happen anyways. We're certainly not forcing that because now we have sites on our technology, but what we're trying to do is automate all of these documents that already go back and forth. The versioning, working on documents together like a contract. And so the goal with Site Vault Free was to elevate site technology, to decrease the barriers, get something free out there that sites love, that's made for them, that they can standardize on. And as sponsors benefit and choose to get automated transactions from their sites, that's where we will have paid products coming in over time.
Makes sense. Now, sites have other challenges, from business development to the need for better ways to continuously engage with potential patients in the community, to getting paid faster by industry sponsors. Can you share for the Trial Site Network, how can they bring all their operations together in a seamless and integrated way that makes life easier for sites?
Sure. I would say that, we don't necessarily have a lack of technology options for sites. And what I have learned personally in my own site journey across different sites that I've worked at is that there is a difference between, purchasing lots of different solutions that solve very specific problems and trying to manually connect them and integrate all of those systems and manage all of that work. That can create a challenge and really not necessarily lead to this efficient operating model that you think that you're aiming for when you initially purchase different technologies as a site. And so I would say when I think of sites being able to work seamlessly and integrated, I think that really parallels with technology that is seamlessly unified on a more of a connected platform. Lots of sponsors work this way to get today and are moving more and more towards a model like this. And I think it's really time for sites to start thinking about this as well. One example that I can share is e-consent. Within my career, we really tried to work on different e-consent platforms, and it was sort of a one-off. Sometimes we would get something that came through as an option for sponsors. We would try to purchase our own technology. Sponsors didn't want to use it. They had challenges with it. And so being able to use something like e-consent standardly across your studies, that also is connected in with your regulatory technology is one example of working across unified systems where as those consents are captured, they're all filed away in a really nice place where all of your information is kept and you're not having to think about creating connections with your technology. So in a nutshell, I think to work seamlessly, they need seamlessly connected technology. And this is something that has only recently become available for sites. They haven't had a lot of options that would really allow them to work like that. And we are hoping to really provide more and more for them with that approach in mind.
Now, finally, before I let you go today, what would you say are the biggest challenges that you see for sites in the future, and how do you think that those can be overcome?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is really the challenge that sites always have and why they exist is taking their patients' needs and keeping that at the center. Being able to truly focus on the patient and make sure that the patient experience is good and that the patient ultimately is getting everything that they need. I really see that clinical trials is very often, more often than not, seamlessly connected with clinical care. And so I think that's a challenge. And as we become more virtual, which we are already doing and we will continue to do, as we have more technology involved in the clinical trial process and sites are having to navigate more and more systems, I hope that we will be able to, especially working for a technology company myself, we will be able to use that to make their lives easier and not harder, so that they can truly stay focused on what matters most to them, which is their patient. My fear is if we get that wrong, and we go down this road where technology actually is now a whole nother additional advanced skill set that they have to learn. And it's creating more negotiation at study startup. And it is creating more of a learning curve and more opportunities for compliance concerns because you've got the same information living across systems, more than one system, and it all has to be verified. And, we are going to make it harder on sites and we are going to take them away from their patients. And so this is something that we really do need to get right because ultimately we're all patients at different points in our life, and we all need to benefit from this. And something that comes to mind for me is when I worked at Vanderbilt, every so often I would come into the office and have a voicemail. And sometimes that would be from a patient, sometimes it would be from a parent of a child that was looking for options. They had a terminally ill child. And those are some of the most difficult voicemails I ever heard. And those were some of the most difficult conversations I ever had. And we have to remember that ultimately sites are directly answering to patients about why therapies are not available for them, about why we simply couldn't get them enrolled in the study in time, or we just don't have that therapy available yet because we're still going through regulatory hurdles. And there's really no excuse to delay care for patients. And I hope as an industry we can all come together to really decrease the barriers that sites have, and find ourselves working with them from a technology standpoint specifically in a way that makes their lives truly easier over time as technology becomes more and more a part of this process, and does not just increase the barriers for sites. We've got to figure out how to get that right.
Right. Well, you have the opportunity, to either simplify it because of the technology, make it easier, versus adding
Right.
another bureaucratic layer on top.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Bree, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We know you're busy, and we appreciate you taking a moment to speak with us today.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
Pleasure's ours.